Depression is a common psychiatric disorder which can be really costly. According to studies done by the South African Journal of Psychiatry, the prevalence of depression within the workplace has such a significant impact on employees' productivity, and at its worst, one of the symptoms can include cognitive impairment. So Professor Renata Skuman joins us to discuss what causes depression in the workplace and why it seems to be on the rise. Welcome to Afternoon Express.
Good afternoon, Jeannie.
I always thought work was a four-letter word, but now science is just proving it. Why are so many people getting so stressed at work?
There's various factors. On one side, we can look at the employee factors, and the other side on the organizational factors. We tend not to take care of ourselves anymore. The world has become so fast-paced. We never switch off from technology anymore. We don't sleep, we don't exercise, we eat junk. So that's all of the things that we should do that prevent us from getting stressed and then develop complications of stress. At the same time, in the work and the organizations, there's more demands. Again, being online 24/7 and being available and the information overload we get. But then there's also the financial pressures we face. There's the job instability, and often there's corporate cultures which the values and the organization as such is not productive to physical or mental well-being.
Yeah. Do you think if you're the type of person who's susceptible to these kind of, to stress and depression, do you think it's possible that you could have a normal, happy life at home and personally and privately, and then be super stressed or to a point of dysfunction at work and vice versa? Or is it kind of linked? Will one person who's generally feeling a little bit low at home carry that onto the workplace and then vice versa?
It can be either or.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to say leave your things at home. It doesn't work that way. You can try to maintain your composure at home, but things might bother you in the back of your mind. But I always think of it as three things. There's your physical health, there's your home life, and there's your work life. And as long as two of them maintain, you can sort of like cope with difficulties in the third one. But it's when two of them falls apart that we really, really struggle.
Yeah. So what do you think has changed? Why do you think people are neglecting their inner self so much?
The one thing is time. We always say, I don't have time, and it's not true. If you invest in yourself and you make time, you will find time for things that's important. And if you just look at ourselves, what is the first thing that usually happens when you get busy is you stop exercising, you cut in your sleep, you don't pay attention to your diet, you neglect your friends, all those things that's so important to make you resilient to be able to cope with the stress at work.
Exactly. So then how should people be able to cope with it? Like, what are some tips that you can give people, like to recognize firstly when they are slipping into a depression? Like, I think if you are in a toxic environment where everybody is kind of high stress, high pressure, how do you identify when it's not normal?
So often people will talk about burnout. Now, burnout is only an occupational phenomenon. It's not a medical disorder. But when you start to get negative thoughts and really doubt yourself and feel useless, worthless, hopeless, then the alarm bells should sound. Also, everyone doesn't necessarily become tearful or have a depressed mood when they are down. You might just lose interest in things that you used to enjoy. So if you don't enjoy your hobbies anymore, or you don't even find joy in your friends or your family or your children or your pets, whatever the case might be, that is big alarm bells for us. So that loss of pleasure, of interest, of drive. And then when you start to wake up every morning and it's difficult. Also then when we start to have disturbances in your sleeping pattern or in your appetite, either more or less.
Yeah. So I think burnout eventually becomes like adrenal fatigue, which eventually becomes and can lead to autoimmune disorders. Why is it so important to sort it out in the beginning?
The burnout part, it's so important to prevent it. As you said, if you neglect it, that constant stress and the cortisol release can cause neurotoxic effects in the brain that can literally burn out your serotonin, your dopamine, your good neurotransmitters. So by the time a patient presents to a doctor or psychologist, it's already advanced to a stage where they will fulfill a clinical diagnosis, most likely of anxiety or depression, which is maybe more than just burnout.
Yeah. How can you recognize where other people in your work environment are suffering from depression or feeling a little bit low or burnt out, and then what can you do to assist?
I think the first things that we often see is the colleague that starts to withdraw. They don't want to make small talk anymore. They don't meet up in the cafeteria anymore. Or people that become ratty and irritable and short-tempered, where previously they had a lot of patience. And that's maybe the first thing that you see. Also where people start to work harder and harder and harder, but the productivity is not there. So they're not working smart and they're doing things over and over.
That's such a good point, actually, because I think I read somewhere that like depression and burnout costs the country's GDP like over 300 billion rand or something ridiculous like that. I mean, that is a lot of money, but it is obviously because of a lack of productivity.
It is, and if you look at that cost to the GDP, which is divided in two parts, so it's absenteeism from work, but also presenteeism. Absenteeism is a small portion of that. The biggest problem is people that's ill at work. Not saying that people shouldn't be at work. Work is really good for you.
Because they're not going to be functional at work if they're not feeling their best either.
But the problem is a lot of people don't get help and don't seek help because of the stigma that is associated with mental health disorders. So they're scared of speaking up or scared to access services.
Because if you're feeling low, I mean, is that, I mean, nowadays I think it is changing, but before certainly, I mean, would you be able to say to your boss, I'm not coming to work today because I'm just feeling I don't feel like
Do you need a mental health day?
Yeah, I need a mental health day.
Definitely not. And that's one of the first things why programs like today is so important, so that we can open this conversation, that it's out there. Mental health disorders is nothing different than physical disorders like diabetes or a fractured leg. Yet then we easily support people. But we should also support and open the conversation and destigmatize mental illness in the workplace.
You know how somebody can be a functional alcoholic to a point. Do you think somebody can be a functional depressant?
Most people with proper support are functioning. There's very few people that's living with depression and anxiety that's not functioning, but they should get proper treatment. Coming back to the presenteeism, as we mentioned, a lot of people don't want to be absent from work or can't afford to be a day off work because no work is no pay. Or if you look higher up in the corporate ladder, the leaders can't be absent from work or think they can't be absent from work because they have to be strong and set the example. But they are the decision makers. And when you're depressed, you can't take clear decisions.
And then other people have to look up at you, so then there's so much pressure on that person. So how can you cope?
It is, and yet, if you show a little bit of vulnerability, we don't have to over-disclose at work, but if you show that you're human, other people will most likely also be more comfortable in seeking support.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating conversation to me, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. So you're going to be spending the day with us, and we're going to be chatting about it a little bit more later. So a poor company culture leads to less productive employees, and after the break we chat to HR specialist Cindy Hendricks on how companies can promote wellness in the workplace. Please do connect with us online and tell us how you deal with day-to-day stress in your life, and please remember to use the hashtag #AfternoonExpress in your comments.